Welcome, sleepy soul. I'm your storyteller tonight, here to help you drift into deep, peaceful sleep. Before we begin, don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more bedtime stories. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is, and if there's a story you'd like to hear next, I'd love to know that too. I never thought much about apartment living. Thin walls, noisy neighbors, the occasional sound of footsteps above you at midnight, it all just blended into background noise. Until I realized the footsteps weren't random, they were following me. My name is Aaron. I'm 19, living in a small one-bedroom on the third floor of a rundown building in Portland. It's the first place I've had to myself since leaving home, and I wanted badly to believe I was independent. Strong. But the first week I moved in, I noticed something strange. Every night, around the same time, I'd hear slow, deliberate steps above me. Not pacing, not restless movement, just footsteps. 5 or 6 of them. Stop. Then 5 or 6 more, directly above wherever I was sitting. If I moved from the couch to the kitchen, the footsteps followed overhead. If I went into my bedroom, they shifted too. I laughed it off at first. Old buildings creak, pipes shift. That's what I told myself. But then I met the landlord in the hallway and casually asked who lived upstairs. He frowned. Nobody. That unit's been empty for months. The next night, the footsteps started again. I remember standing in my dark kitchen holding a glass of water, heart pounding as the ceiling above me groaned with movement. Not just footsteps this time, a dragging sound, like someone pulling something heavy across the floor. I didn't sleep at all. The following day, I convinced myself to be logical. Maybe someone had broken into the empty apartment, maybe a squatter. That would explain it. So, after work, I stopped by the front office and asked for the spare key. The landlord hesitated but handed it over, warning me to be careful. When I opened the upstairs door, the air smelled stale, untouched. The place was spotless. No furniture, no belongings, no footprints in the dust. I stood there in the silence, convinced I'd finally lost it. But when I got back to my apartment that night, taped to my door, was a Polaroid photo. It was me, standing in that upstairs unit. My throat closed. My hands shook so violently I dropped my keys. Someone had been there, watching me. Close enough to take a picture while I searched the apartment. I wanted to call the police, but what would I even say? "Hi, I think my ceiling stalker left me a Polaroid." They'd laugh. They always do, until it's too late. Over the next week, it escalated. Notes slipped under my door. "You walk heavy. Blue pajamas tonight." Another photo, me, asleep on the couch. That's when I realized it wasn't just someone living above me. It was someone inside. There's a crawl space in these apartments. Small, tight, barely wide enough for a person. It runs along the ceilings and walls, connecting the units. I didn't want to believe it, but the sounds, the timing, the way the photos were always from impossible angles. It all made sense. Some nights, I wake up to the faint sound of breathing through the vent above my bed. And now, I don't drink water late at night. I don't move around after dark. Because the last note I found slipped under my door in tiny, blocky letters said, "I like when you stay still." When I was 16, my mom used to joke that I had a guardian angel. She said someone was always looking out for me, making sure I never missed the late bus, never got caught in the rain, never walked home alone without someone nearby. I never told her the truth. It wasn't an angel. It was him. At first it seemed harmless. I'd see the same man on the bus after school, late 30s, plain clothes, glasses, nothing remarkable. He never spoke to me, just sat 2 rows behind, quiet. I thought he was another commuter, maybe a dad heading home from work. But then he started showing up in places he didn't belong. My name is Hannah. I live in a small town in Ohio with my stepdad, Mark, and my younger sister, Lily. My mom travels a lot for work, which leaves me in charge more than I'd like. Between school, my part-time job at the diner, and babysitting Lily, I barely had time to notice at first how often I saw him. At the grocery store, at the library, even once outside the school gates, standing across the street with his hands stuffed in his pockets. He never approached me, never smiled, just watched. I told myself it was coincidence. A big world shrinks when you're paranoid, right? But then small things started happening. A note slipped into my locker. Pretty hair. A Polaroid photo taped to the side of the diner's garbage bin. Me, serving a table. I tried to tell Mark. He brushed it off. "Probably some kid messing with you," he said, barely glancing up from his beer. But kids didn't have handwriting like that. Kids didn't follow you across town. One night, I was walking Lily home from her friend's house. The streetlights were buzzing, weak, leaving whole stretches of sidewalk in shadow. I heard footsteps behind us, slow, measured. I turned, and there he was, the man from the bus. "Stay close," I whispered to Lily, gripping her hand so tight she winced. He didn't speed up, didn't run, just kept walking at the exact same pace, always staying 100 feet behind. I cut across the park, hoping to lose him. But when we reached the swing set, he was there, standing at the edge of the playground, watching. That night, I pushed my dresser in front of my bedroom door and kept Lily in my bed. The next morning, taped to our front door, was another Polaroid. This one wasn't of me. It was of Lily. My chest went hollow. Whatever this was, it wasn't just about me anymore. I started carrying a knife from the diner's kitchen, tucking it in my backpack. I stopped going anywhere alone. I memorized every squeak of the floorboards in our house. And still, it wasn't enough. Because one night, I woke up to the sound of our screen door creaking open. I jolted upright, heart slamming in my chest, and crept to the hallway. The living room was dark, but I swear I saw the shadow of someone standing just inside the door. I grabbed Lily and we hid in the bathroom, locking it, sitting in the tub with the knife clutched in my shaking hand. The sound of footsteps moved through the house. Slow, patient, like whoever it was wanted me to hear. When the police finally arrived, called by a neighbor who saw the door hanging open, they found nothing. No footprints, no broken locks, just another Polaroid on the kitchen table. This one was taken inside the house, of me and Lily, asleep. I used to think paranoia was something only anxious people struggled with. I was 17, busy with school, friends, and scrolling late into the night. Nothing about my life felt unusual, except for one thing I could never quite put into words. It started small. A text from an unknown number that read, "Cute hoodie. Red suits you." I laughed it off at first, thinking it was a wrong number. I did own a red hoodie, but so did half the kids at my school. Then came the second message the next day. "Why'd you cut through the park alone? Dangerous, don't you think?" That one made me pause. I had cut through the park. At dusk. Alone. My stomach tightened, but I convinced myself it had to be a prank. "My name is Claire. I live in a quiet neighborhood in Oregon with my dad. My mom passed away when I was younger, and Dad works nights at the mill, which means I'm alone more often than not. Our house backs up to a stretch of woods that always seemed peaceful, until the night I realized someone might be watching from them. One Friday evening, after binging horror videos online, I heard it. The crunch of leaves outside my window. At first, I thought it was just a deer, but when I peeked through the blinds, I saw the faint orange glow of a cigarette. Someone was standing just inside the tree line, not moving, just watching. I froze. My phone was on my bed, buzzing with another message. "You look prettier without the curtains closed." My hands shook so hard I dropped the phone. I wanted to scream for Dad, but he wasn't home. Instead, I locked my bedroom door and curled beneath the blankets, heart hammering. I told myself it was my imagination, that I was being dramatic. But over the next week, things escalated. I'd find footprints in the dirt by the back porch, cigarette butts crushed into the ground. Once, I came home from school to find the back door unlocked, though I was sure I'd locked it that morning. Nothing was taken, but my desk chair was pulled slightly away from the table, like someone had been sitting there, waiting. I tried to tell Dad. He laughed, told me I was reading too many horror stories online. "Claire, no one's interested in stalking you," he said, half teasing. I wanted to believe him. Then came the night everything shattered. I had just showered and was brushing my hair in the bathroom when I heard it. Soft, deliberate breathing on the other side of the door. My pulse spiked. I slowly reached for the doorknob, but before I could touch it, a voice whispered through the wood. "Finally, alone." I screamed, slamming my weight against the door. I heard footsteps pounding down the hallway inside the house. By the time I gathered the courage to fling the door open, the hall was empty. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in the corner of my room clutching Dad's baseball bat until the sun came up. The next morning on the porch, I found a Polaroid photo tucked under the welcome mat. It was me, sleeping in my own bed. I tore the photo up and begged Dad to believe me. This time, my shaking voice must have convinced him. He called the police, who searched the property but found nothing. No fingerprints, no signs of forced entry. Just me and my story, which sounded crazier the more I tried to explain it. But I know what I felt. I know what I saw. And sometimes, late at night, I still hear that faint crunch of leaves by my window. Every time I force myself to look, the woods are empty. But sometimes if I stare long enough, I swear I see the brief flare of a cigarette in the dark. I work the closing shift at a small bookstore downtown. It's not glamorous. Dusty shelves, flickering lights, the smell of old paper clinging to everything. But it's quiet, and I like quiet. Or at least I used to. My name's Claire. I'm 22, and most nights I'm the only one left in the shop after 9 p.m. I sweep, count the register, lock up, easy. The first time I noticed him was a Tuesday, middle-aged, scruffy, holding a battered notebook. He lingered by the true crime section for almost an hour. Never bought anything, just watched. When I told my manager, she brushed it off. Bookstores attract weirdos, comes with the territory. But then he came back, again and again, always at closing, always pretending to browse. I'd catch him peeking over the shelves, eyes fixed on me. One night, as I left through the back alley, I heard footsteps behind me, slow, steady. I quickened my pace. So did he. I ducked into a coffee shop, heart racing, and stayed until they closed too. When I finally went outside, the alley was empty, but on my car windshield, someone had tucked a folded page torn from a notebook. It read, "You look loneliest at 9:47. I tried telling myself it was some creepy prank, but the notes kept coming, slipped between books I shelved, left on the counter when I turned my back, one inside my locker, always handwritten, always precise. The worst part wasn't what they said, it was what they noticed. You tuck your hair behind your ear when you're nervous. You always check the back door twice. You hum when you count money. Who pays that much attention? Last Friday, I was closing alone again. The store was empty, or so I thought. I bent down to pick up a fallen book, and when I stood, I saw it. Another note resting on the counter that hadn't been there a minute ago. My stomach dropped. This one said, "Don't scream." I spun around, but the aisles were empty. My pulse hammered in my throat. I grabbed my keys, locked the register, and bolted out the front door. When I got home, trembling, I found the final note waiting for me on my kitchen table. I don't know how he got in. It only had 3 words. "See you tomorrow."